Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a presentation and conversation with Andrea Feinberg on unlocking the secrets to onboarding, the keys to success. You're welcome to submit comments and questions into the chat feature at any time. And if you're so inclined, we'd love to know where you're joining us from today. That's always fun to see. A recording of this webcast, which will be approximately 45 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, will be available on the Clarity Consultants website and on Clarity's YouTube channel in the next few days. I am Brenda McNabb, the VP of Service and Development for Clarity Consultants. And over the past 20 years, I've had the privilege and the pleasure to serve many leaders in learning and development and organizational development by providing excellent talent for projects of all different sizes and complexities. And with that, I would like to introduce our guest and welcome her, Andrea Feinberg. Andrea, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today, Brenda?
I'm doing great, and I'm excited about our topic today. We get so many requests for effective onboarding training from our clients. So this is a great topic and very current always. So looking forward to hearing a little bit more about you and your journey here, specifically into change management, and then how you became passionate about successful onboarding.
Absolutely. So again, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be
You're
here.
welcome.
This is one of the really hot topics that I love to talk about. It always comes up in some way, shape, or form in conversations that I have. So I'm Andrea Feinberg. I'm a change manager. And along with that comes a lot of executive coaching. I help leaders to maximize their ROI on their internal investments by always driving the rapid adoption of change. So I've spent most of my career in HR and IT,
Mhm.
and not just with change management, but I bring about 15 years of deep tech stack experience. So I can talk to the people side of the house. I can also talk to the process and the technology. And interestingly enough, I fell into change management accidentally at one of the largest digital storage companies that was going through a big M&A. Um, the previous change manager had up and left. No one knew where he had gone. The director of IT called me and said, I need you as my change manager, as in last month. So I realized I had been doing it my whole career. And that's how I kind of fell into change management. And I'm just passionate about all things on how people adopt to change and how companies support their most valuable asset, which is their people.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, your story's great. I know we met years ago in discussing several change management projects.
Mhm.
And as I think about the topic of onboarding, there's nothing more change oriented than starting a new job. So I can see the intersection between your passion for change management and onboarding. So I know we're looking forward to getting into your presentation. And also, hopefully, we'll be throwing some questions your way from the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on it. And by the way, I just want to say we've got Cleveland, Ohio, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Richardson, Texas, Austin, Texas, Tennessee, San Carlos, California, Toronto, Canada, Rhode Island. I could go on. Anyways, thank you all.
Yes,
This is so much fun. It's so great. So with that, we will get started.
sounds great. So, a lot of times our stories um, tell a story of either something that we went through and was a great success or a great failure. My chaos with onboarding um, happened about 10 years ago. I landed my dream job. It was a company that I had been following for many years. It was the most influential company in California. They were the industry leader in telecom. Um, they had a huge net worth. Um, it's for me, it was emotional because I sat in my car for a few moments on my first day. I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, this is my winning moment. And I just honestly couldn't believe it. And what was a dream really became a reality, because I walked into no welcome packet. Um, I was surprised someone knew I was there. I had no laptop. My laptop actually ended up being a month late. I had
Wow.
no system access. I couldn't access my email, the portal, anything like that. Um, I didn't know who my manager was or who I was working with. So, I
Goodness.
felt like I was in an alternate universe, as in, I think I need, like, a life preserver, someone throw me something, anything. And again, this is a real picture. It's from one of the most famous places in San Diego, where I'm from. It's called the Children's Pool, the Children's Wall. Um, we were having about 6 months ago, 12 to 15 um, foot waves. And
Hmm.
this picture sums it all. I mean, it was total chaos. I'm like, does anybody here know me? Just what am I doing? I mean, I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried.
So you go from being really excited to having this unsettling experience that's almost surreal to you. And I can
Absolutely.
imagine what you were thinking. Well, and we do hear about these stories, right? And there's many people watching and that have had similar experiences, good, bad, and ugly. So that does not sound great.
Exactly. And so as we continue, on the next slide, you can see really some of the onboarding failures that I had faced. And, this may resonate with some people, and I'm sure it will.
Okay.
Yeah, so on to the next slide. Um, so as you see here, I kind of broke it out in three little buckets. One being clarity, process, and structure. Um, and you can see the things that we're missing between that, the communication breakdown, and the unorganized information. We're always given a checklist of what we need to accomplish or what we need to go through and do and read and see. I was given about 55 links to see more information on the portal or on the project
Only
website.
55.
Yeah, only 55. And about 50 of them were broken, or I got 404 errors. Now, I didn't know who I was working with, so it wasn't like I could, tap the shoulder of someone sitting next to me or even ask anybody for help because, again, I was just by myself. So here I am, I'm thinking, wow, this is how this huge company looks at or treats or plans for a new employee. I could really make some suggestions here.
So that's probably where you became passionate about it, having that traumatic experience.
Right. And that's usually what happens. It's until something doesn't work, then you're excited and interested in about it because you could make it so much better for the next person.
Outstanding.
So if we go and take a look at the next slide, usually when people hear the term onboarding, what immediately comes to mind is the paperwork, right? You have paperwork you need to fill out, legal and compliant forms, you're signing the agreement, the offer letter, and that's usually what people think about when they hear onboarding. But
Hmm.
it really couldn't be further from the truth because you're overlooking what it's really all about. And that's kind of why I get into the hidden costs of bad onboarding. So, um, what happens is that if you just focus on the paperwork and that process, it usually costs companies between 450 to 550 billion annually That's really no joke. And I got the data from Gallup,
Huge number.
Gartner, and HBR. Um, it's a huge cost annually, but not only that, getting into something that's even more profound is that the organizational damage that really impacts employee retention, employee productivity, and and the team, the culture, and the employee experience. So, what we see is everything from new hires being disengaged and less productive to really high turnover rates. And what I mean by high turnover rates is that you have people that are new hires that are walking into a bad onboarding employee experience. They want to quit within 45 days, but then the other people are what we would call quiet quitting, and they're actively looking. And especially today, with so many companies competing for top tier talent, um,
Mhm.
it's almost, well, it's become a must have. You know, if you want to attract that top tier talent and you really want to profoundly impact your bottom line, but really become that best place to work, you have to invest in these people first processes. And so this slide tells a lot about this story, which I did not think it was this bad.
Yeah, that is, these costs are tremendous, and not to mention, I mean, in particular, the retention and the turnover. We have a lot of companies that are in manufacturing space,
Mhm.
and in particular, with all of the safety training, these are all of the practical parts of onboarding an employee, but there's also a psychological part, a welcoming part, a feeling of organization, a continuity and a flow to how they're onboarded. And I just want to ask you, what do you think onboarding and new hire training, are we talking about the same thing here? Um, or is there a difference between those two in your mind?
Well, I think that onboarding is kind of like the whole encapsulating experience, and employee training is part of that. One of the most important parts, as are so many others. So it's
Yeah,
really kind of the whole process.
right. Yeah,
But you're right
huge.
in that it does have, you know, a toll on people in terms of, did I join the right company? I feel alone and abandoned. I'm
Hmm.
frustrated and overwhelmed. Um, and really having a process that is very disorganized and is disengaging.
It reminds me of, the old story about just getting thrown in the pool. And not to
Mhm.
take, I'm here in Silicon Valley myself, and I hear a lot of stories, especially in the tech industry. It's almost like a rite of passage. Here you are, there's 20 meetings on your calendar already. You don't know who these people are. You're getting emails, you have no idea if it's from a VP or somebody at your
Right.
level. And it's interesting in the chat, I'm seeing, seeing some companies mentioned, which is fine with me. Feel free to do that. But I just want to say that there is a connection between your experience and a comment here in the chat, which is quite notable. So, okay, yeah,
That's so funny, because I mean, not funny, but it really is. It's almost comical when you hear, these, again, these huge companies. I'm not talking about
right.
small businesses. Um, and not to say that maybe they don't or they do have great onboarding. I don't know. But from my experience, again, I've been at IBM, Motorola, um, Western Digital, a lot of financial technology, some startups that were acquired by Apple. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm talking huge behemoth corporations. that this would be one thing that they got right. Because like you said, you're grabbing up for, a flotation device, a life preserver, and not only do you not know who to talk to, but you don't know what to do with the information. Because Brenda, you just said, oh, you're given an email with, here's your meetings, but you don't even know if those meetings have an agenda, why you're there, or,
Yeah.
and then panic and frustration. Are you supposed to talk? Are people expecting you to say something because you have no idea what to say? So it's
Yeah.
all this kind of sense of here you go, write a passage, figure it out on your own. And by the way, good luck.
Well, I know that we're going to get into some of your thoughts on how to make this a much better experience. I do have a question here. I'm just going to throw your way. But by the way, I do want to say yes, the slides and probably an expanded set of slides will be sent to those who registered for this webcast. So we will get those over to you after. Thank you, Andrea, for allowing us to provide that. Somebody's
Absolutely.
asking, when taxed with creating onboarding training, how do you recommend pulling in the other aspects of onboarding? So here's that connection again. There's the training, and then there's the onboarding experience. And I know that could perhaps be a very complex question for you to ask in this format, but
Mhm.
how do you pull in, other aspects of onboarding
I
in
think
your
that that
creating
is,
training?
yeah, I think that that is a great question because, again, traditionally with the onboarding, it's the employee training, the legal and compliance issues. They have to take these do these videos, get, certifications. But what I'm talking about is, yes, that is a vital, important part. It cannot be missed. I feel that in order for companies to move so fast forward, they need to take a step back and go back to basics. So
Mhm.
the a lot of people may think of, oh, you hire, then you onboard. Onboarding is day one, which when it really isn't. Onboarding should start at the time of the job description. You're writing the job description, who's going to be the manager, who are all the, important parties, all of the stakeholders, and your checklist stems from that. What is the person that we need? How do we map their roles and responsibilities? Does this job description really describe the person that we need, that we want, that is going to make our company successful and be a great integrated part of our culture? So it's going through all of those little micro steps and
Interesting.
and assigning a buddy and a mentor. That is so important. Someone who's been there, they've done that, maybe they had to figure it out themselves, but you can go to them for help and support. And checklists, a place where they can track their progress, and
Mhm.
a lot of check-in meetings.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds like a much
and
better
again,
structure.
yeah, and there's a lot of information in some of the backup slides that will help with this as well.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nothing at the moment, so we can
Okay, great. Yeah, so as we go to the next slide and we take a look at, um, what do we mean by people first onboarding? Um, and about 99.99% of the companies will say, we do people first onboarding, but
mhm.
they really don't. Um, they
And
do.
you're gonna define that for us, right? People first?
Yeah, exactly. So again, the number one most important asset in any company is the people. They think it's the product, but it isn't. If you don't have people, you don't have a product. So when you put people first and have a true, in essence, people first onboarding, the power
Mhm.
of results is absolutely astronomical. It's like a domino effect.
That is so interesting. I'm seeing this number here. Welcome. Happy you're here. And oh, by the way, we're saving $2 million annually, which is an actual number. What does that relate to? Like large companies or on
So
average Fortune 500 or
that's about an estimate between medium and large size businesses. Um,
interesting.
a lot of times you don't even get a welcome. And
Mhm.
when you invest in people first onboarding, like the picture here, it should be roll out the red carpet, get out the
Mhm.
confetti. We are so happy you're here. Just those words immediately kind of sets the tone. It makes people feel warm and fuzzy, welcomed, and that someone cares about them because welcome, we're so happy that you're here.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that because we do provide consultants to create onboarding, and I wonder what the consultant. I mean, there's probably even more horror stories if you are a consultant joining a team with pretty much no onboarding or no like, we're glad you're here. So, um,
Oh, exactly. And, again, it's people first, right? When you engage and empower and inspire and really just take the time. This is not, again, this is not rocket science. You know, this is basic onboarding. And if you just take a look at and ask yourselves, and I've done this with many companies, you get you get into a new company, you're just hired. What do you want to know? What do you need to know? What's going to help you most? And it's walking through a logical process.
we have a comment here in the chat, and that makes sense. That talks about the difference between onboarding and orientation.
Yes,
And because there's usually some pretty whiz bang fun orientation that you go to for a couple hours, usually on a Monday or Tuesday morning, you
yes,
arrive and you're with all the other newbies, right?
yeah.
And yeah, so but that's different. So I just want to ask you about some of your experiences where the onboarding wasn't great. Did you at least have any kind of orientation? Have you ever been
So,
in a situation where the orientation was great, but then the onboarding, maybe not so much?
yeah, so I've experienced both. So in this instance, um, the onboarding was a huge miss, a pitfall, and total chaos. But the employee experience, the new hire orientation, was great, but it wasn't long enough. And that's what I heard from a lot of the people there. It was just 3 hours. I felt like, and again, it could have been a little bit longer where you actually are learning more about the culture, learning more about the business. What do
Mhm.
they specialize in? What is it that makes them so great to work for? What makes it so great that you're coming on board? Welcome. We're so happy that you're here. You're going to be doing this, which helps us to do that. Um, you know, Making it personal, kind of like a what's in it for me, I think
Mhm.
is really, really powerful. I've also been in in instances like you just mentioned where the onboarding is okay, minimum viable product here. Okay, it's an MVP release. This is the beta version 1. It was okay, had the bare minimum there, but the new hire orientation was totally unorganized. So, what's interesting is the importance of getting these both right. And you can't do that unless you have the feedback from people that have experienced it and listen to what they're saying. Because those new hires are your eyes and your ears.
And the numbers speak volumes here in terms of productivity and ROI, which, um, yeah, and the investments that you make into the effectiveness of the training, being able to speak to a couple of recent webcasts. Two things come to mind here. One is
Mhm.
that you need to take this to maybe C-level people or senior leaders and say, this is
Absolutely.
why we want to have it, not just throw something against the wall. These numbers are very real. The other thing is that now we've got, is it 3 or 4 generations in the workforce? And we had a
Right.
webcast on this several months ago. And when you said, what's in it for me, we talked about how the baby boomers, so to speak,
Yes.
are maybe even Gen X. It's more about, okay, it's about the company. I'm here, put me in, coach. I'm ready to go. As opposed to what's in it for me. I've got lots of choices. I'm starting my career. And so there's varying degrees of attachment, perhaps, to the warm, fuzzy, what's in it for me. Aspect of the onboarding, but certainly seems important, like very important.
Oh, absolutely. And not only about not only what we've talked about, but you brought up something so relevant in that you have multi-generations in the workforce. And the generation that's just entering the workforce, um, like you said, they have a lot of choices. So you want to make sure that your companies has kind of what I call the employee experience team, and that is their only job and function is to present, the team culture. Um, they're presenting their experiences. They're showing you around maybe to, they have videos where you're meeting other people, other employees. And these are employees that have just started, or maybe some
Mhm.
employees that have been there for a long time. And you're meeting people, and it's more about, hey, Brenda, we're so excited that you're here and you're going to be working with us, developing, creating ABC. And here's how it helps people by doing XYZ. So you're bringing them into a more immersive experience. Again, that just sets the tone.
Yeah, there's a mention here about an onboarding passport by function, um, which is really interesting. Meetings set up with key people pre-scheduled. It makes absolute sense. And when I worked at Google, and I can still remember my first few days there, and just literally being so overwhelmed. This giant company. I actually had 3 desks because I served 3 different groups, and luckily they had those bikes that you could ride around.
I don't
And
mean to laugh, but it's
it's just like, what's happening?
but
Yeah,
so
so this
so
would
when
be cool. I
yeah,
don't remember anything like that.
when I told you at the very, very beginning, again, this was California's largest employer. They at one time they had 38 buildings. I'm not kidding. Not only was my laptop a month late, but then when I got the laptop, I got the blue screen of death, which is very popular if you're working on a PC. You're basically doomed.
Mhm.
So that laptop didn't work. They gave me a loaner. The loaner didn't work. So they told me to use my telephone. I couldn't use my phone because I didn't have any system access. And at that time, they
Mhm.
didn't have two-factor authentication. So I said, how how would you like me to work from my phone? Because I don't have access. I can't log in. I can't do anything. And they said, well, we'll figure out. Just hang
Yeah,
tight.
to which you heard dead silence. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no, I think that, I like that idea that you said the onboarding passport. Again, I've seen it where teams have, it's like the welcoming committee. Um, and I think that that really makes it personal.
Hmm.
Um, and it really engages you and you feel like you're at a company and on a team that isn't so huge and you don't get lost, with this huge company. Like you were saying, you had 3 desks. That's interesting. So yeah, I mean, as we see this and we go to, the next slide, like what are we really talking about? So we've gone through the numbers, the chaos, the pre-boarding, the onboarding, and now, it's building that pre-boarding blueprint. And I like to think of this as this is your people first plan for
Mhm.
success, with milestones. And a lot of people say day one, meaning the day your feet hit the ground, you're at your job. But really, this is way before day one. Um,
Yes.
it really starts after the decision has been made to hire someone. The pre-boarding starts. And I always like to think of pre-boarding as that you're laying the foundation for the house. You're
Mhm.
not going to go and put up some walls and you don't have a foundation, the walls just crumble down. So,
Mhm.
the pre-boarding, the onboarding, you're really building that foundation for that employee experience. And again, you want to have a unified, collaborative approach. Um, this isn't just a one and done, where I always say prepare, 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 and align with everyone that needs to be involved because you're rolling out the red carpet and having that confetti. Woo, we're so glad that you're here. And again, it's welcoming people to the team, right? A lot of people think pre-boarding is just, logistics, paperwork process. Here's your desk, here's your laptop. Thank you. Good luck.
Yeah.
And it really isn't. It's about that connection, that engagement, that culture and leadership. And I always say, we're excited you're here. Those aren't
Mhm.
just words, it's not a phrase, it's a promise. So, what are those milestones? These are milestones that I've either helped companies create or that I've gone through myself. Um, you know, I once got a customized welcome package. I loved it. It wasn't, just a cup. It was, you know, um, it was like a little folded out paper, and people actually wrote, "Hey, so glad you're here,
Wow.
Brenda from, Learning and Development." It was something like that. Then I've also had video messages where it was people from my team. "Hey, we're so excited that you're here. I work on
Nice.
so and so. Here's a fun fact about myself. Can't wait to meet you." It makes those moments feel that they're not so intimidating, that you're not so alone, you're not so abandoned. Um,
That's really fun, and the impact that it has on the individuals. It lets you know that those individuals around you that are writing those things or sending those videos, that they understand your function there, that they've already accepted you onto the team. And yeah, it just like change management, so much of this is just human psychology.
yeah, it really
Yeah.
is. And the impact and the power that this has on a person. Imagine you see videos of people welcoming you. I mean, you're going to be
Yeah,
excited. You're
it's
going to be
amazing.
like, wow, I haven't even joined and people are already welcoming me. Hey, this is great. And, you're going to be motivated, empowered, engaged, excited. Um, I can't emphasize enough, assign a buddy, a mentor, not your manager, not their manager, not someone in another department, someone who's been there, that's done that, that
Hmm.
can guide you and advise you because you're going to have a lot of questions and people don't like to ask a lot of questions. So it
It's so
really,
true.
really
That
helps.
is a really good point because there are some cultures where asking a question, you're just looked down upon instantly. It's really the yo-yo kind of environment. And like I said, I do believe it's a rite of passage. I remember for a long time, referring back to Silicon Valley, you, like when we were looking for consultants for clients, we always said they have to be really comfortable with ambiguity, you know. And we heard that so much. I haven't heard it as much recently, but the way that I distilled that down is that you're comfortable just being thrown in the deep end of the pool and then you'll figure out how to swim. And it was like they were saying these are the kind of people that we want for the culture. But I do believe that the other side of that was that they just knew that the onboarding was not going to be done well. And the people aspect of that, which is not happening. So there were
Yeah.
they said ambiguity, but I think they maybe meant, one of these situations, okay with abandonment upon arriving on your first day. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And, no one wants to feel abandoned and alone. I mean, it's really one of the worst things to feel. And like you said, sometimes people look down upon you if you ask questions for clarity. But
Mhm.
again, you have to, if you're expected, to know anything, to do anything, you need clarity on everything. And so
So
just
true.
having a buddy or a mentor just there, and I've gone through what you're going through. I know it's really daunting and scary, or whatever they say. It makes you feel um, that it's not so overwhelming, that it's okay for you to ask something because other people have too. And again, it's someone's been there, done that, so it
Hmm.
makes you feel that much more comfortable.
Yeah, and almost like they're an advocate for you as well. With
Oh,
that being
yes.
very powerful, powerful role.
Hmm.
Oh, here's a suggestion. Have the team take the newcomer out to lunch. This feels very old school, but it is so great. And Clarity now works virtually, but I do remember a few years ago, prior to COVID, that we would always do this, and it would always have to happen in the first couple of days, which is being
Hmm.
suggested here, and even some, in this virtual world, these one-on-one Zoom meetings, 15, 20 minutes just to get to know everybody. That's a great suggestion by one of our attendees here today. Yeah.
I love that. So that I used to do that. Um, and it's great because you're removed from the work environment. And so you can really connect with
Yeah.
other people that you're working with, on a more personal human level. I think really kind of starts to build that camaraderie and build that connection.
For sure.
Okay, so if we go to the next slide, here, this is really telling because this goes and really tells the story of the bottom line ROI from effective onboarding. So we looked at all of the numbers on the bad onboarding and the chaos and the decrease in productivity and disengagement, et cetera. So this took into account data, um, and it was an example for a company that hires 100 people in 1 year, and what they experienced with lower turnover costs,
Hmm.
faster time to productivity, the reduced hiring costs, which again, I don't know why that was so low, but it is. Um, and then the improved engagement, but really the total return on investment. That's that speaks volumes.
That's
And
a huge
again,
jump.
this is just something that's simple, that if you take the time and invest the time to create something that's amazing, spectacular, it's engaging, and it shows someone that you value and appreciate them, that it's that domino effect. It's
Hmm.
not just an ROI estimate, it's you're building a team, a place where people don't have what I call the Sunday scaries. Sunday at 4 o'clock and you have the pit in your stomach. You know what's coming in the morning. You're really excited about what you do, who you do it with, and who you do it for.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned. I think it's exactly 4:09 PM is the lowest part of the weekend for people, uh,
Yeah, I mean,
who are, having struggles with what they do for a living. That's like, uh-oh. So it's some very specific time. I remember hearing about that. But yeah, this is amazing. And that's a really high number, um, for, relatively smaller firm. Um,
right,
yeah.
exactly, exactly. And imagine, I think the largest company that I was part of had 275,000 employees. Um, this this particular chaotic failed onboarding experience that I had, they had about 38,000 employees. And I'm just thinking, imagine what the numbers would have been there.
Yes, in this breakdown here. Someone is asking, and I don't know if you have access to this, but how much about how much did turnover decrease in this particular example or this grouping of examples for these 100 hire companies? Any idea? Might not have access to that right now, but it's a good. How much did turnover
Yeah,
decrease?
I
By
would
100%, yeah, 50%, 100%. What am I saying?
no,
But
I mean, again, that would be great to know. I don't have that now, but it is definitely something that I can look into. Or when we send the slides out, you could kind of do a copy and paste and see what you could find. But
yeah, yep,
again, that would be great to know.
yeah. Yeah, these are again numbers that are going to be influential in seeking budget from leadership for these programs, which everybody on this call uh, is about helping people feel more comfortable, build skills, helping organizations be more successful, and can't think of anything more important than getting people started in the right way. So important.
Absolutely. And I like the fact that, it's like when presenting to leadership, I think that and again, it's so important for leaders to really hear, to see, and experience. Again, they don't have to, walk in this person's shoes, but to really come back to ground level and see, like, hey, this is where the disconnect is. And if we build a better program, here's what we can expect and see. And here's how it's done at, let's say, these other companies that are our competitors, because like you said, people have choices where they want to work.
Yeah, that's interesting. I share a fun thing from Gretchen here, someone who's worked for us for a very long time. Thank you, Gretchen. Um, uh, a client, she asked a client the question, if your onboarding was a movie, what would it be? Action, comedy, documentary, sci-fi? I notice horror isn't mentioned here, but I'm sure that that's coming of age. That's really interesting. So I think it's important that to be able to humanize the request in this
Right.
way, by asking these insightful questions to leaders as well as part of it.
And that is a great question.
I want to know how they answered the question. I want to know
Yeah,
how
I
they.
mean, but again, when you ask it in like a personal way,
Mhm.
if you were to describe your onboarding as a type of music, what would it be? Um, it gets people thinking, talking, laughing, um, and they're more willing to share the successes and the failures because nobody's looking at them like they failed. Um, and again, you're not saying, oh, you did this, you didn't do that, you did this, they didn't do that. Again, you're just trying to make a process that was created that is disjointed much better for the employee.
Mhm. It makes perfect sense. That's great. And I believe this was our last slide. Um, And well, that's our last slide there. So I'm not seeing any additional questions. Maybe we'll just give it a moment here to see if anybody has questions. They're just continuing to engage with each other, which we love too. And yeah, this has been extremely enlightening. And I think what I came away with is a sense of a people first. That's sort of the catchphrase that sticks out with me. And then the connectivity and sort of separating out the logistics from the people side of it. And there's so many simple things to do, the buddy idea,
Mhm.
um, different things like that, setting up meetings and also getting things out to people before they even start so that there's already a ramp to knowing that you're being engaged, you're valued, and you're welcome aboard as part of the team. So that's really great.
That's
Let's
awesome.
see.
I love
Oh,
that you, what's that?
I'm going to see there may be one question, but please respond. I think we've got
Oh,
one more
no, I was
coming.
just saying that, that's, everyone's going to take away something different. And I think you just kind of hit some of the most important points, um, spot on. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Bet there is a question, 11,
Sure.
12, somebody's asking, oh, a question, what do you think contributes to the disconnect between thoroughness of the interview and background check process and the onboarding experience? It often feels like new employees are left to navigate the onboarding process on their own without adequate guidance. Sorry, trying to get this question sort of
Sure.
distilled down. Uh, Often seems to fall short. Yeah, I'm not sure how you would interpret that. Employees left to navigate the onboarding process on their own without adequate guidance. I think it's, yeah, same level of attention applied during the interview process. Oh, I see. Yeah. So here you have the interview process where you're meeting with 20 different people and they're grilling you. And that's like so extensive, 7 interviews and all this stuff. And then you get on board and the dichotomy, right? It's just, yeah, more of a
Right,
common trap.
because that's where the time, attention, and focus is on that interview. But it's so much more than the interview. Um, People, like I said, spend their time, their focus, energy on the interview. And the interview is just part of that onboarding process. But there's often that disconnect there that needs to be taken into account when you go all the way back to that job description. Because out of that job description is going to come who are the managers, who are the team members, who's going to be interviewing. And again, it's this whole onboarding logical workflow that you want it to have a steady pace and not just go like this and then drop.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, thank you. I think with that, we will wrap it up here. We're a little over 45 minutes, but I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Loved everything in the chat and the engagement is always great. Thank you for joining us from all 4 corners of our country here. And Andrea, thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience with us and giving a few great takeaways about onboarding successful.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Brenda, for having me here. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, it's one of the hot topics I love to talk about. And I'm definitely going to use that one suggestion of if you were to describe your onboarding, like a movie genre, what would it
Yeah.
be? Because
Yeah, that's great. And I just want to, I'll put in a plug because I know we're going to be working with you on an ebook or perhaps additional
yes,
webcast that talks about the use of AI in change management. So stay tuned for that next step with Andrea here.
yeah,
Thank
lots of
you.
great things are coming. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Brenda.
thank you. Bye, everybody.